What if the people you trusted most betrayed you in the darkest way? After her sister's mysterious death, Mia uncovers shocking secrets that reveal lies, betrayal, and hidden agendas. Watch as she pretends to forgive, carefully orchestrating a chilling revenge that will leave everyone questioning who they can truly trust. I always believed my sister Sarah was unbreakable. She was the kind of person who carried storms inside her but never let the world see her drown. She laughed easily, loved fiercely, and reminded me every single day that we were stronger together than apart. She was my anchor, my protector, and sometimes the only reason I had the courage to keep going. So when the news came that Sarah had died, everything inside me collapsed. They called it suicide. They said she must have been struggling in silence, carrying pain none of us noticed. The words felt like poison on my skin. I stood at her funeral, numb, listening to people whisper how tragic it was, how she must have been lost, how none of us could have saved her. I wanted to scream at them that they were wrong, that they didn't know her like I did. My sister was many things, stubborn, emotional, even reckless sometimes, but she wasn't weak. She didn't give up. Not like that. 4 days after, I drifted through shadows. I slept in her old sweatshirt, desperate for her scent that was already fading. I opened her notebooks, her textbooks, her sketchpads, searching for a clue, something that would explain the impossible. My parents grieved in silence, drowning in their own pain, but mine turned into suspicion. The story didn't fit. Something in me whispered that Sarah hadn't left us by choice. That whisper became louder when I found her phone hidden beneath a stack of clothes in her closet. It should have been handed over to the police, but it wasn't. Almost as if someone wanted it forgotten. I charged it, hands trembling, and scrolled through her messages. Most were normal, friends, reminders, late-night memes. But then, buried in the thread with her boyfriend Daniel, I saw something that made my blood run cold. His words weren't those of a grieving partner. They were sharp, mocking, laced with threats. Things like, "Don't push me, Sarah. You know what happens when you talk too much." And then there were the ones with Chloe, her best friend. My stomach twisted as I read their late-night conversations. They weren't comforting her. They were laughing at her. Picking apart her insecurities. There was even a message that chilled me to the bone, "She's so dramatic. I swear, if she actually does it, it saves us the trouble." I dropped the phone, shaking, unable to breathe. My chest burned with grief and rage so tangled I couldn't separate them. My sister hadn't been alone. She hadn't been weak. She'd been betrayed. And the people closest to her, the ones she trusted the most, had torn her apart piece by piece until she broke. That night, staring at the ceiling in the darkness of my room, a decision settled inside me. I couldn't tell anyone, not yet. I couldn't go to the police with a few text messages that could easily be explained away. But I could do something else. I could watch. I could wait. And I could make sure that Daniel and Chloe paid for what they did to Sarah. I began with Daniel. Everyone at school still saw him as the grieving boyfriend, the tragic victim of love lost too soon. He walked the halls with his head bowed, playing the part of the shattered man. But I knew better. I watched him carefully, memorizing his routines, the way he smirked when he thought no one was looking. Behind his mask of sorrow was a boy who believed he had gotten away with murder, even if he hadn't pulled the trigger himself. Chloe was no better. She clung to me after Sarah's death, pretending to comfort me, pretending we shared the same grief. She held my hand, whispered fake reassurances, and swore she missed Sarah every day. But I saw the flicker in her eyes, the way guilt twisted her smile, the way she avoided Sarah's favorite songs, favorite places, favorite conversations. She knew what she had done. And she knew I didn't. Not yet. I kept my distance at first, afraid my anger would spill out and ruin everything. But grief has a way of sharpening into focus when mixed with rage. Slowly, carefully, I put the mask on. I pretended to forgive. I let them think I was healing. I forced myself to cry in front of them, to thank them for being there, to play the broken little sister they believed I was. And it worked. They welcomed me in. They thought they had fooled me, but the truth was, I was fooling them. Every night I went back to Sarah's phone. I dug deeper, piecing together the puzzle she hadn't lived long enough to finish. I found photos of her with Daniel, his arm around her but his smile never reaching his eyes. I found voice recordings she had saved, conversations where Chloe's laughter was sharp and cruel. I found enough to know my instincts weren't just grief talking. Sarah had been cornered, pushed, and crushed under the weight of betrayal until she couldn't breathe anymore. And I promised her, silently, that they would feel the same. It wasn't enough to expose them. I didn't want justice handed to them by some court. That would be too clean, too easy. I wanted them to unravel. I wanted them to taste the fear, the paranoia, the isolation my sister must have felt in those final days. I wanted to be the shadow that haunted them, the ghost of Sarah that never let them sleep. So I studied them. I learned what they feared, what they hid from others, what secrets they tucked away hoping no one would notice. I became patient, quiet, calculating. I let them think I was healing, but inside, I was sharpening my revenge into a weapon they would never see coming. Sometimes, late at night, doubt crept in. I asked myself if Sarah would want this. She had always been the forgiving one, the one who believed people could change. But then I remembered the messages, the laughter at her expense, the cruelty that left scars deeper than anyone could see. They hadn't just hurt her. They had destroyed her. And for that, forgiveness was no longer an option. The first step was gaining their trust. Without it, I couldn't get close enough to break them from the inside. So I swallowed my hatred, buried my grief, and reached out. To Daniel, I said, "You were important to her. I don't want to lose that connection." To Chloe, I whispered, "You were her best friend. I need you now more than ever." The words tasted like poison, but they believed me. They leaned in, arms open, never realizing they were embracing the very person who would ruin them. And as I smiled back at them, masking the storm inside me, I knew this was only the beginning. Because revenge isn't about striking fast. It's about waiting for the right moment, the perfect crack in the mask. And I was willing to wait as long as it took. The hardest part of revenge isn't planning it. It's patience. Every nerve in my body screamed to confront them, to shout what I knew, to force their masks to shatter. But anger burns fast, and I didn't want fire. I wanted poison, slow, quiet, impossible to trace until it was already too late. So I wore the face of forgiveness. I told Daniel I didn't blame him, that Sarah's death wasn't his fault. His eyes softened with relief, as if he'd been waiting for my absolution. He wrapped me in his arms, murmuring hollow words about how much he loved her, how broken he still felt. I let him believe I was his ally in grief, when in truth I was memorizing every insincere beat of his heart. With Chloe, it was easier. She wanted to be seen as my rock, the shoulder I could lean on. She texted me late at night, asking if I was okay, if I needed her. I answered with just enough vulnerability to keep her hooked. I let her feel important, let her think she was easing my pain. All the while, I was studying her, peeling away the layers of guilt she tried so hard to hide. I started small. I asked questions I already knew the answers to. Where were you the night Sarah died? What was the last thing she said to you? How do you remember her? Their stories slipped, subtle cracks in their rehearsed performances. Daniel claimed Sarah had been distant in her final weeks, but Chloe swore she had been clingy. They didn't even bother to align their lies. Every inconsistency was another confirmation that the truth was mine to uncover. At school, people pitted me. Professors offered extensions, classmates lowered their voices when I passed. But instead of drowning in their sympathy, I used it. I leaned on Daniel and Chloe in public, making sure everyone saw them supporting me. The more they were tied to me, the harder their eventual fall would be. I wanted witnesses. I wanted an audience for their unraveling. Nights became my sanctuary. Alone in my room, I combed through Sarah's phone again and again. I uncovered voice messages Daniel had sent her, threats masked as jokes, manipulation disguised as concern. Don't embarrass me, Sarah. You know how I get when I'm angry. Chloe's words were no kinder. You're lucky anyone even wants you, Sarah. Maybe stop being so pathetic for once. Hearing them made me want to smash the phone against the wall, but I didn't. I saved everything. I was building an arsenal. I began planting seeds. With Daniel, I hinted that Chloe seemed distant, that maybe she was hiding something. He brushed it off at first, but doubt is a slow poison. It doesn't kill quickly, but it spreads until it consumes everything. With Chloe, I did the same. I casually mentioned that Daniel seemed secretive, that he avoided questions about Sarah. I pretended to trust her with my worries, and she clung to the role of confidant, never realizing I was twisting her against him. The beauty of lies is that people fill in the blanks themselves. I didn't have to invent stories, I just had to point them toward the truth they already feared. And they began to falter. Daniel's smile slipped more often. Chloe's reassurances became brittle, laced with her own suspicion. They thought they were confiding in me, but in reality, they were feeding me the rope I'd one day hang them with. My first test came when I overheard Daniel bragging to his friends at a party. He spoke about Sarah like she was a burden, rolling his eyes, dismissing her struggles as if she had been nothing more than an inconvenience. The fury that burned in me was almost uncontrollable, but instead of lashing out, I recorded him. A single file saved quietly on my phone, one more weapon. With Chloe, it was easier to exploit her vanity. She thrived on attention, desperate to be admired. So I flattered her, told her how strong she was, how Sarah had always envied her confidence. I watched her drink in the words, never realizing how much they exposed her need for validation. And then, one night, she slipped. She admitted Sarah had been too much, that sometimes she felt relieved not to deal with her drama anymore. She tried to laugh it off, but I memorized every word. The mask was slipping. The more time I spent with them, the clearer their cracks became. Daniel drank too much, snapping at anyone who challenged him. Chloe grew defensive, lashing out at small slights. They were unraveling, and all I had to do was nudge. Still, there were moments when the weight of it almost crushed me. At night, lying in bed, I replayed Sarah's voice in my head. I wondered if she would recognize the person I was becoming. I wasn't the little sister she once knew. I wasn't the girl who believed in kindness and second chances. I was something colder, sharper. Sometimes I hated myself for it. But then I thought of her last days, her isolation, the betrayal she endured from the people she loved most. And my doubt hardened into resolve. The second test came during finals week. I spread a quiet rumor, just a whisper among classmates, that Daniel had cheated on Sarah before she died. I didn't say it directly. I only suggested I had heard things, left silences long enough for others to fill. Within days, the story spread. Daniel confronted me, demanding to know why people were talking. I acted shocked, pretended to defend him. But Chloe's eyes told me she wasn't so sure. The poison had taken root. Watching them squirm was satisfying, but it wasn't enough. I needed to push harder. So I turned to Chloe. Late one evening, I confessed that I worried Daniel hadn't been good to Sarah. I asked if she thought he had anything to do with her death. Her face paled, her hands fidgeting as she denied it. But denial too strong is its own confession. I could see the fear in her eyes, the fear of truth being exposed. That fear was my leverage. I began isolating them from each other. To Daniel, I suggested Chloe had been talking about him behind his back. To Chloe, I implied Daniel still blamed her for things she said to Sarah. I watched the distance between them grow, the trust erode, their once solid alliance beginning to crumble. And through it all, I remained the bridge between them, the one person they both believed they could trust. But trust is fragile. And soon, I'd shatter it. The more they leaned on me, the more power I held. They confessed things they shouldn't, things I could use. Daniel admitted he was worried about some shady financial choices catching up with him. Chloe revealed secrets about other friends, cruel betrayals whispered in drunken confidence. Every word they gave me was another nail in their coffin. One night, as I closed Sarah's diary, my eyes lingered on her last entry. The words were shaky, desperate. I don't know who I can trust anymore. Tears blurred my vision, but beneath the grief was something sharper. I whispered into the darkness, "You can trust me, Sarah. I'll make them pay." By the time the semester ended, the cracks were too wide to ignore. Daniel and Chloe still smiled in public, but their fights were frequent, their whispers sharp. The doubt I had planted was blooming, twisting their bond into something toxic. And I wasn't done. Not even close. Because revenge isn't just about destroying your enemies. It's about making them destroy each other. And soon, they would. By the time weeks had passed, the cracks I planted between Daniel and Chloe had begun to spread like fractures in glass. I watched them carefully, feeding them comfort with one hand and suspicion with the other. They thought I was their ally, but I was only their audience, waiting for them to destroy themselves. Daniel was the first to show signs of collapse. His arrogance always made him reckless. He bragged too loudly, drank too much, and assumed everyone admired him. But I'd been collecting his slips, his drunken words, his cruel laughter about Sarah, and when the time was right, I used them. I printed one of his recordings and left it tucked between his books. No note, no explanation, just his own voice mocking Sarah like a ghost returning to haunt him. The next day, he was pale, paranoid. He cornered me, asking if I'd heard about recordings circulating. I tilted my head, confused, and played the innocent sister still mourning. His panic was enough. Even if no one else knew the truth yet, he did. And guilt is the sharpest blade. Chloe was easier. Her weakness was vanity. She thrived on people's admiration, on being the girl others envied. So I cut that away. At a campus event, I whispered a single detail to the right person, that Chloe had cheated on an exam. By morning, it was everywhere. She stormed into my room, crying, swearing she hadn't told anyone but me. I hugged her, promised I believed her, and wiped her tears with a smile she never saw. The beauty was that neither of them suspected me. Instead, they turned on each other. Daniel accused Chloe of being careless, of letting secrets slip. Chloe snapped back, saying Daniel was hiding something, that maybe he wanted her ruined. They shouted, whispered, then shouted again. And I just listened, letting their rage fuel my quiet victory. Meanwhile, I continued leaking pieces of Sarah's hidden truth. A text screenshot one week, a voice recording the next. Just enough to stain their reputations, but not enough for them to know who was behind it. Students whispered, professors watched more closely, friends drifted away. Daniel's mask of grief cracked into anger. Chloe's mask of support crumbled into paranoia. And me? I played the grieving sister caught between them, the only one still willing to stand by their side. It reached a peak during a group study session. Daniel and Chloe tried to sit side by side, but their smiles were thin, their whispers sharp. And then it happened, they exploded. He accused her of betraying him, she accused him of ruining Sarah. Their voices grew louder, rawer, until every word was a dagger I quietly recorded on my phone. Not a full confession, but close. Enough to let the world hear what kind of people they really were. That night, Chloe stumbled into my room drunk and broken. She cried about Sarah, about guilt, about how she never thought it would go that far. I held her as she sobbed, every tear confirming what I already knew. She wasn't just complicit. She had helped bury my sister. And she couldn't run from that truth anymore. Days later, Daniel came to me too, restless and wild. He whispered that people were turning against him, that Chloe couldn't be trusted, that everything was falling apart. Finally, he asked the question I had waited so long to hear. Do you think Sarah's death was really suicide? I stared at him for a long moment, letting silence suffocate the air between us. Then I whispered, what do you think? His face twisted, guilt flashing like lightning in his eyes. He didn't answer. He couldn't. By then, their lives were already caving in. Rumors of Daniel's cheating, Chloe's lies, their cruelty towards Sarah, it was everywhere. Friends abandoned them. Professors kept their distance. The pity they once received was replaced with suspicion. Their perfect masks were shattered, and beneath them was the rot only I had always seen. Still, I didn't stop. I wanted them to feel Sarah's despair. Her isolation. Her hopelessness. So I pushed further. I widened the distance between them. I told Daniel that Chloe was whispering about him. I told Chloe that Daniel blamed her for Sarah's death. Every word tightened the rope around their necks. And they believed me, because I was the only one left who seemed loyal. The truth was, I was never theirs. I was Sarah's. And everything I did was for her. Watching them unravel was intoxicating. Daniel pacing, snapping at shadows, convinced someone was after him. Chloe trembling, begging me to tell her she wasn't alone. They were shells of the people they had once been, their arrogance stripped away, their guilt too heavy to bear. And I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because revenge isn't just about ruining lives. It's about making them tear each other apart with their own hands. And as I watched them unravel, I knew the end was coming. The trap was set, the stage prepared. All that was left was the final act. The final act of revenge is quiet, calculated, and merciless. I had watched Daniel and Chloe unravel for weeks, their paranoia devouring them from the inside. Every whispered doubt, every betrayal I planted, every secret I leaked had pushed them closer to ruin. But now, it was time to end it. I had gathered every piece of evidence, Sarah's texts, Daniel's recordings, Chloe's confessions. I didn't need to do it myself. The truth would spread faster than my hands ever could. I uploaded everything anonymously, strategically sending snippets to friends, professors, even the campus social groups where they had thought themselves untouchable. The effect was immediate. Daniel's phone buzzed endlessly. Notifications, accusations, screenshots, murmurs of gossip he could no longer control. He paced, screaming into the empty apartment, demanding to know who had betrayed him. Chloe, meanwhile, found herself alone, her friends turning away, her reputation shattered. She begged me to intervene, her eyes wide with fear, but I stayed calm, the perfect mask of sympathy. The best part of revenge is watching people destroy each other. Daniel confronted Chloe in the middle of the student lounge, voices rising, accusations flying. "You leaked it," he shouted. "You ruined her, you ruined everything." Chloe shrieked back, blaming him for her exposure, claiming he had orchestrated it all. They didn't see me sitting at the edge of the hall, silently recording every confession, every lash of fury. They were finally giving me what I needed, their own downfall, hand-delivered. No one could help them. The more they clawed at each other, the faster their worlds collapsed. Professors reprimanded them, friends abandoned them, the whispers had become a roar. Daniel tried to defend himself, but every defense only revealed another lie, another betrayal, another crack in their fragile facade. Chloe's pleas for forgiveness sounded hollow to everyone around, her arrogance exposed, her cruelty laid bare. I didn't need to lift a finger beyond what I had already done. The exposure was enough. They were crumbling, and their own guilt was the executioner. I watched them, silent and steady, as the pieces fell into place. Daniel's scholarship was suspended, Chloe's friendships dissolved, their reputations destroyed in a way that no apology could ever repair. And yet, it was more than just ruin. It was justice. Every cruel laugh, every mocking message Sarah had endured, every betrayal they had committed, finally, it had a price. And in the quiet that followed their destruction, I felt a strange calm. I walked past the places we used to go, the cafes where Sarah laughed, the benches where we shared secrets. The memories were sharp, bittersweet, but they fueled the satisfaction of what had been accomplished. Revenge isn't loud or chaotic. It is patient, precise, and final. I had been patient, and now the results were undeniable. Standing in front of Sarah's grave, I whispered what I had promised her months ago. "They're gone, Sarah. They paid for everything they did to you. No one will ever forget what they are. I felt the weight lift slightly from my shoulders, a mix of sorrow and relief washing over me. I had kept my promise. And yet, even as the campus returned to normal, I remained in the shadows. I didn't need recognition or praise. My sister's justice was enough. Daniel and Chloe had destroyed each other with their own hands, guided only by the subtle manipulations I had set in motion. Their paranoia, guilt, and fear were my final gifts, the shadows of my vengeance lingering long after the noise of their downfall faded. Revenge is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, patient, and devastatingly final. And now, as I walked away, the memory of my sister by my side in spirit, I knew the world had balanced, if only for a moment, because I had carried her justice in my hands. If you enjoyed this chilling tale of secrets and revenge, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping stories. Hit the bell to never miss a twist, and comment below with your thoughts. What would you do if you discovered betrayal hiding in plain sight?